Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm recording this on January 19th. This is the third video on the Davos coverage that I'm doing today. The open forum session is going to start soon here. Hopefully we can get a live stream of it. This is which 2050 do we want? Okay, but before they go to their opening here, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and help support the work that I do by getting the great products that I offer. I have dual purpose deodorants that you can use every day. You can get it in citrus and also in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. These are made from essential oils from the Himalayas, very high quality. You use it as a daily deodorant, and it will help to detoxify your body. It has no aluminum and no baking soda. It's made from natural ingredients. Use it every day. It's for males and females. It's dual purpose. Use it as a daily deodorant and help to detoxify your body. All right, hopefully this will start. Sure why it hasn't fed through yet. All right, while we're waiting, also please go to my store and get the zeolite. Zeolite will bind to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals and allow you to urinate them out within 6 to 8 hours. Take 3 small drops underneath your tongue and drink filtered water. And by doing this, you are improving your immune system and your endocrine system. Your body will function properly. Make sure you stay away from processed foods and drink filtered water. And in your home environment, please make sure that you clean that environment, get rid of those chemicals that are in your basement or in your cupboards that you don't need. If you do need them, put them in double layers so you're reducing your exposure. Really important. And by detoxifying your body regularly, you're slowing down the aging process. So please go to my store and get the zeolite. Make sure you use discount 5. You get $5 off any order. Okay, I don't know why. It's not. All right, I'm going to continue on with the Rogoff video that I had on the previous while I'm waiting for them to live stream here.
Vehicles, CAC doing well. That is small compared to infrastructure, real estate, things like that. So China's growth has held up. I don't know what real numbers are, but the official numbers of 5% we just saw. But they're massive surplus. It's not going to the US, but it's going to Europe, it's going to Africa, it's going to Asia. If we have a China-Europe reset, is Europe still going to want all those exports and losing all those jobs? I mean, China has to rebalance its economy. The world doesn't just want to eat Chinese exports.
Yes, that massive trade surplus that you spoke of in the Chinese context. Let's talk a little bit about India. The Prime Minister making it very clear that the government intends to continue to double down on deregulation, on the ease of doing business, to try and grow in foreign direct investment. We've got a whole bunch of Indian states here, the largest ever representation in Davos, trying to draw in investors. What do you make of the India story?
Well, I don't think there's any question that India has been the most successful country, large country, the last several years. It's had the highest growth rate. I think those numbers are real. On the other hand, the challenges are profound. I mentioned all the workers coming into the labor force. I mean, India has not been able to employ them all. A lot of them, young men, young women, are still forced into subsistence farming. But on the other hand, there are parts of India that are growing very well. I mean, the relationship with Trump has been disappointing. I mean, India is our ally, and so why are we, putting on punitive tariffs on India?
Not the only ally.
I'm a sweeping member of the foundation.
So we're going to the open forum right now.
You a hearty welcome to this first session of this year's open forum. The theme of this year is to develop visions for 2050. Tomorrow starts now, or today is the first day of the future, as we can say. For more than 20 years, the Open Forum has been a place where we have dynamic debates. We want to bring in all the different perspectives and discuss about them, and also discuss themes which are of interest for you, the audience. We want you to participate in the debate, and therefore we are very grateful that you have taken the time to be with us tonight and discuss with us. Over the next few days, we will have many discussions about decisions which we will take today or not take, and what will be the impact and influence of this on our future life, as far as technology is concerned, health, nature, climate, or also the development of our societies and of all of us. Therefore, we are all concerned. Therefore, I would like to thank you again that you have taken the time to be with us tonight, and I wish you have interesting discussions this week, and I hope that you will leave Davos or stay in Davos, if you live here, with new insights, many things you have learned and seen here for the first time, and I would like to wish you a wonderful evening. Thank you very much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Roda Sodiri, host of the Global Business Report on Horizon News. Happy to be here moderating this panel. And thank you to the World Economic Forum for doing the work for me and introducing the topic. We're very much looking forward to your thoughts as well. So we're going to begin with our panel. I think it's fair to allow everyone here briefly to pretty much tell us the 2050 that you're looking forward to. Some folks want a 2050 where there's only female presidents, or some folks want a 2050 where there's only electric cars. So just feel free to share the 2050 that you want, and then we'll get into more specific questions for each of you, then round robin, and then
Think about the stupidity of saying we're only going to have female presidents in 2050. Why don't we have presidents that actually have literally the skill set, the demeanor, and the leadership to be able to move society forward independent of their karyotype? See, once again, we've already interjected within 2 minutes. Within 2 minutes, you have the MC already interjecting wokeism. And, here again, why can't these people just, have a decent haircut?
bring in our audience. Tim, I'm going to start with you. What 2050 would you like to see?
Of course. Well, I'm young. I'm a woman. I'm from the so-called global south. So that should be a teaser for what's coming next. What 2050 do I want? And honestly, the question asks, what 2050 do I want? But I really went in and asked so many of my colleagues, friends, even a person who was in charge of running a media company to tell me what 2050 do they want so that I can tell something along the lines that resonates with most of us. And the best of the answers.
Come on, answer the question.
That's liberal, that's democratic, and that's at peace with itself. And there was a strong emphasis on a world that's at peace with itself and that doesn't need to really have this fight back and forth. And that strongly connects with the 2050 that I want. Of course, human rights at the center of it. I don't want a 2050 where we need to come back again and talk about the conversations, the conflicts, and all these problems that we are dealing with today. But also at the same time, I want a 2050 that we feel prepared. We know that across generations, youth, elders, children all feel ready for what's coming next and what's happening now, and that they feel included and that they are included. A little idealistic for sure, as we can see it, but that's what a young woman can do, you know. That's what they can put forward in front of everyone and push for it as a result of their hope and resilience. And I would stop there.
All right, and I actually should be introducing everyone. Zainab Azizi, of course, global shaper with the World Economic Forum in Kabul. I'm going to come over to, yes, fantastic stuff. You're welcome, doing some great work. This is a very diverse
Participation medal.
Up next, of course, is Agnes Kellermart, Secretary General, Amnesty International, UK. Agnes, what 2050?
Well, first of all, I want us to get to 2050. That's the first thing. And frankly, given how some of the political leaders are behaving right now, I think we do need to question whether we, as a collective, can actually reach 2050. So that's my first wish. My second wish is that we get to 2050 without annihilation of half of the world, without World War III, without more repression, more genocide, more destruction of the environment that we have seen. So that's my two big wish for 2050. Now, if we do manage to get to 2050, if we manage to have the vision to imagine a 2050 without the destruction of the world, if we have the strength to be like the 1945 generation that reimagined the world but without World War II, I would want to have a 2050 that is predicated on a relationship between human and the planet that allows for sustaining lives. I would like to see biodiversity respected. I would like to see equality being maybe not a thing of the past, but certainly something that we are committed to decrease. Equality, inequality within state and between state. I would want to see a 2050 that is centered on human rights protection, individual rights, collective rights. I would want to see a 2050 that recognizes the ills of the past, the injustice of the past, that is predicated on the notion that those responsible for those ills, those responsible for bringing the planet to its knees, those responsible for genocide are actually paying for it in 2050. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that. Professor Adam Tooze is the director of the European Institute at Columbia University. Professor, what 2050 do you want to see?
Well, I'm so glad that they asked Dr. Paul Cottrell, because what I want in 2050 I'd be about 78 years old. All right. We got to make sure that we have economic viability in the United States. It would be nice to improve the environment and the degradation that has taken place, especially in the health of our oceans. There's lots of plastics being dumped in the ocean. There's a lot of microplastics that are causing problems with your organ systems, like your kidney, like your liver, like your brain, like your heart. A lot of people don't realize micro and nanoplastics literally embedded in your brain, you can't get rid of. And they are starting to produce earlier onsets of dementia. So it'd be nice to clean up the ocean. Don't worry about the temperature. Clean up the ocean. Get more bang for your buck. What I also want is regulation of AI. We need to make sure that we don't have the decoupling of labor and capital. And we need to decouple the hyperglobalization that we have, so we have economic clustering that takes place in certain regions. Why does China have to be making everything for the world? Why? Now, in terms of geopolitics and world conflict, we have to make sure that Taiwan is protected and that the first island chains are not in control of the Chinese, and that the United States should have freedom of navigation through the 9-dash line. That's what I want in 2050. But what we got here is a bunch of globalist liberals that don't realize that their clothing, their ability to have a conference like this is predicated on the prowess and the military might of the United States. You think that they would have this if the United States wasn't the supreme power post World War II? Of course not. Of course not. Europe would be in a shithole. But let's continue. Thanks for asking. Let's continue.
I don't think I ever thought I'd be saying this, but an autonomous and self-determining Greenland. Okay, all right. And all that implies of one of the two countries that I hold the passport of, because getting us there at this point would imply a substantial change in mind, which may be one of the themes of this week here at Davos, an unusually important Davos, if I in that respect. More seriously, I think I would double down. Not that isn't serious. I would double down on the climate and environmental balance question, and I would double down on it because it's so precisely defined what we need to do, and because the astonishing good news is that we're actually now in the mid-2020s in a position to get to, at least for a very large part of the problem, something like sustainability over the next. As quickly as the next 10 years, we have a chance of hitting the Dubai commitments of 2023, which is a tripling of renewable energy capacity and a doubling of energy efficiency. These are not impossible goals. And they're crucial. They're absolutely crucial. And you just see it all around. This is the warmest I've ever seen Davos. It's crazy. As we were coming up, it was like 8 degrees at cloisters. It's mad. I mean, this is truly a thing that is happening. And of course, this isn't a problem principally for incredibly rich and privileged people like ourselves here. They will all find ways of coping, I'm sure. But I think if you're looking out to the horizon of 2050, the absolutely central question are the developmental possibilities of Africa. Full stop. Because by 2050, I'm going to be white and very old. And the majority of young people in the world will be African. And that is a radically new scenario. I mean, Asian predominance is the historical norm. But the emergence of Africa as a densely populated center of global demographic dynamism is a radically novel phenomenon. In some ways, of course, a very good news story, but one that
Africa is dynamic. They're still in a pre-industrial age. In some countries, almost like not too far off of the Stone Age. See here, you're at Davos, and what is this guy? He looks like he's a homosexual, and not only that, he doesn't even bring a tie. He doesn't have a button-up shirt and a tie. What the hell's wrong? In 2020, in 2050, it would be really nice to actually have a world where it's about God, country, and family instead of this ultra-liberal bullshit.
Question of development, and the energy is central to that. And we have the opportunity at this moment to make that sustainable. So that, for me, is the thing. That's my hope, I think.
Thank you. Well, I'm from Nigeria, the most populous nation in Africa, so thank you so much for mentioning that.
Your grounds in the track,
I appreciate that very much. Tell Hawkins, you, of course, are the global shipper in Sydney. Of course, it's by folks here, of course, in Kabul. What's your 2050 that you want to see?
Amazing here. Where's the conservatives? I don't see any conservatives on the panel.
Have different answers. I think a future that's defined by dignity, by justice, by things that feel far out of reach at the moment, by sustainability. I think where my head sits, though, is that we need strategy fueled by hope, and hope alone might be
about economic stability. Come on, get it out of your mouth.
Just one where we didn't have access to the information we needed. Another one where information is now so freely available that our attention is kidnapped. And so we've not, and I would say, I speak for young people, maybe in this perspective, I don't think we've both had access to the massive information and command over our attention at the same time. And so I hope for a 2050, because we can't possibly predict the challenges that we will be facing in 2050. We can estimate, I think, or anticipate. But what I hope is that we have the societal infrastructure, we have the literacy and the hygiene to know what levers to put our hands on. Because right now, that literacy, that understanding, I think is predominantly in the hands of people who are not.
It's economic viability, military prowess, and we have to regulate AI because we have to prevent the decoupling of labor and capital. It's that simple. And all the problems that we have in terms of the environment, we can engineer our way out of it, and we'll make money doing it.
Trajectory in the way that we need it. So I hope that the unshiny conversations about policy, about infrastructure, about social connectivity become cool, become engaging, and become something that we can engage with effectively. And
no, America needs to be top dog.
Difficult conversations. It really
difficult conversations.
And seeing that art sort of shrivel up in society. So our ability to sit in the presence of people we disagree with and almost find a sense of fulfillment and joy in that. So if we can be defined by that in 2050, I think we'll be in a far better situation, whatever our methods.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Arjun Prakash, he's a co-founder and chief executive officer at Distill AI. And that, of course, is one of the core topics here at Davos around the world. Arjun, what 2050 do you want to see?
Yeah. As a technologist, I spend a lot of time thinking about what this paradigm shift that AI is going to bring is going to mean for all of us. And I have a very simple hope for 2050, which is I hope we as a world can afford every single human agency and dignity. And let me explain why I say that. It is inevitable to me that in 2050, we will have a world where there is an abundance of systems that require intelligence. I think healthcare, human services, education is going to be abundant. It's going to be very easy to scale these systems. And what it also means is that there are consequences for economic structures that today require these systems to scale the people. And there is in my opinion, bad version of this, which causes disenfranchisement of a lot of people who today are part of scaling these systems. And I think there's a very optimistic version of it where we today make a commitment and a choice to redesign our economic and cultural systems to accommodate this new world. And
that's code. That's code for socialism. That's code for Marxism. That's code for cybernetics. Listen. The Enlightenment is in danger because of these fucking cocksuckers.
person the freedom to have agency to participate in it. Because the nature of many people's jobs is going to change. And we need to bring them into the fold because I think there should be a collective move upwards. I think there are a few times in our history where there have been the opportunities to make a collective move upwards. And I genuinely...
Economics is really simple. Have skills to be employed. Make sure there is coupling of labor and capital. That's why I say that AI needs to be regulated. And also, you got to be worried about making sure that your constitutional freedoms are upheld. And it's on the foundation of the Enlightenment by John Locke. It's really simple. Life, liberty, and property. Now, your life and liberty are curtailed if you have a surveillance state because of AI. Your property rights will be curtailed when you allow for a cybernetic society to take hold. Because what they're going to do is they're going to try to control manufacturing. They're going to try to control the means of production, and they're going to try to control your property. And if you don't believe me, take a look at what's coming out of the mouth of Mondani, the mayor of New York. He's antithetical to the Enlightenment. So this is just a bunch of gobbledygook from a technologist that's literally promoting socialism.
Waste this opportunity.
All right, fantastic. Thank you all for your opening thoughts there. So now we're going to get more specific. Zainab,
Yes.
how much of an impact should public policy have in shepherding us towards the 2050 that you want to see? With all the things you mentioned that you want to see,
Yes.
how much of just public policy?
Public policy is important, but it has to have a theoretical foundation. Thank you for asking. Dr. Paul Cottrell is saying that public policy is important at the local level, at the countrywide level, and at the global level. But it has to be based on the foundation of the Enlightenment. And if you erode that, you are promoting Marxism. But thank you for asking. Wait, why isn't she talking? I lost her. Hold on.
Interesting. So
come
I
on.
mentioned a liberal world, a democratic world, and a world at peace, and all of it combined from a top-bottom approach would center itself in public policy. Because
I have to go on a divergence. Okay? Trust me. All right? Dr. Paul Cottrell is telling you something. You see these people that are wearing these iPhone watches? If it's set on the hepatic mode where it's informing you and it's shaking or it's creating a signal of the notification, either hepatically or through a sound, your body goes into sympathetic mode and your cortisol levels go up. In other words, by wearing an Apple Watch and having it in hepatic mode or in notification mode where it is signaling that you have something through voice, through sound, through shaking, it literally ages you faster because it's activating the sympathetic nervous system. So these technologists, these people are saying that we need to love the world and just come together. They're actually slowly, through pernicious activity, having their sympathetic nervous system being activated. Do not wear one of these watches. They will age you. But let's go back to let's go back to the youth and how they want 2050. Because she's in her 25, all right? So if she's 25 years old right now, right? So she's going to be in her 50s when we have this. Her ovaries are going to be dried up, and she's going to be aged because she's wearing the Apple Watch.
And to each other, serving each other, or becoming one by Allah. And throughout history, it was either the law of nature or the law, some sort of law, some sort of policy, some sort of regulation has ruled upon us. And we have wanted that law to be there for a purpose, to serve ourselves, to serve our needs. But does it really meet all the needs we are putting out there to respond to? That's under question, of course. And
you need public policy. The problem comes in is when you have the uber wealthy affecting the public policy. In the United States, we have something called K Street. It's just as powerful as Wall Street. You got lots of money flowing in the lobbying group to push regulation through Congress. And they create loopholes. Sometimes you get regulation that helps the society, but you get a lot of regulation or deregulation that hurts society and just helps the wealthy. What about the deregulation of the banks during the Clinton administration that led to Lehman? So we have to make sure the Davos crowd doesn't have as much political power through its lobbying mechanism. But thank you for asking.
I have a deep, from all the experiences in life, immigration, conflict, our schools being bombed, my country being cornered, and of course, many other countries being cornered around the world, you see that public policy at times doesn't really respond to the needs of people. But it's the civic engagement, is the deeply societal efforts from young people, and at times old or children, really bring the change. And it has happened in its simplest form that we can see or hear about these days is protests. When public policy doesn't respond to our needs, people get up, raise their voice, and they protest. And we see that everywhere. But sometimes if your country or the system that should govern you and respond to your needs doesn't respond to you, but restricts you, and you cannot protest, then you go and create or establish efforts hidden or in the public that can address your needs. And as an example, a huge example is education is banned for girls above 6th grade in Afghanistan, not specifically, but mainly for young girls. But what happened, and the policy is not responding, regional efforts are not there, international law, nothing is responding, and it's a basic human right that's denied. So what is happening is youth around the world.
Education education at all levels in terms of age and in terms of gender is really important. You need to have an educated society. And there needs to be more efforts to making sure at the inner city level, even in countries that are poor, like Afghanistan, that all individuals are getting a certain level of education. Hopefully an education that is above high school level, right? To have the skills to move forward. But Afghanistan, honestly, is in the Stone Age. And it's because it's run by a theocratic regime. It's run by people that are literally in the Stone Age. So what you have to do is, it's about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, life, liberty, and property rights. It's about God, country, and family. Because if you're pro-country and you're, and you're a pro-family, you're going to want to develop your community to be safe and prosperous. How is it going to be safe and prosperous? You have to have constitutional freedoms. You have to have rule of law. You have to have security. You have to have a growing economy. See, those principles are super important for a prosperous society. God, country, and family, and the Enlightenment. Not the Quran.
They are putting in efforts, creating platforms, using tools such as AI or other, or they're just basic efforts to reach out to these girls through internet, through websites, through meetings, to respond to their basic wish of getting education.
Yeah, I agree with her.
And that's where I believe
Right.
public policy fails, because we as humans, not all of us, some of us fail to really center it on the people of that community. That's just as an example.
But here's the problem. This is the problem that she misses. You gotta fight for it. You got to fight for it. Not talk. Not go to Davos and talk. Talk. You gotta fight for it.
But I'm sure we all have many examples, other examples that we can resonate with and talk about.
Thank you for that, Daz. Yeah. Agnes, you've spoken, about your worries over the spread of authoritarianism across the world, and Zainab was just talking about, protests, and we've seen a number of protests flare up in different regions. As we march towards 2050, the protests seem to be matching. Well, I'm going to put that to you. Do you think the protests are matching the spread of authoritarianism? And is authoritarianism essentially, is there a check on it, in your view?
Well, authoritarianism is galloping, it's increasing. It's not just an Amnesty International finding, it's a finding of everyone who research human rights, democracy, and so on. Some of the most long-term studies have concluded that right now we're back to 1985 level in terms of how many people in the world live in so-called democracies. So we have lost some count since 1985, since the fall of the Berlin Wall, all the progress.
No one knows how to dress.
A U-turn for people.
Look at this.
Authoritarianism is quick. Democracy takes a very long time to be established. Look at the United States, 12 months of Donald Trump in the White House, and it is a playbook of how authoritarian practices get embedded into every institution, from attacks on freedom of expression, freedom of the media, academic freedom, freedom of association, attacks on dissent, creation of new militarized security forces that are unbounded, the attacks on migrants, on refugees, on trans, on women.
These military, quote, military forces, ICE, DHS, they're trying to get rid of the illegal aliens. They're here in the United States illegally. So that's not authoritarianism. Oh, the tariffs that he wants to implement? Maybe the uber liberalization of free markets hurt the economic clustering in the United States. So maybe you need to rebuild the economic clustering in the United States. We can't build enough ships to fight a naval war against China because why? We don't have enough naval yards anymore. So wait a minute. She thinks that illegals should be coming into the United States and just using the United States as a buffet? Is that what she thinks that we should do? Don't you think that there's a problem here? And this is the reason why there are so many people with economic nationalism and this nationalistic, in kind of like this progressive nationalism that's taking place in the United States, why they're so pissed off at Davos. This was right there, right there. She just said she can't even dress appropriately for it. Like she's some sort of like rock star. You notice that all these people, they try to dress up like rock stars. They don't know how to dress. It's like the Bono effect. The bottom line is this. We have a lot of illegal aliens in the United States and need to get the fuck out.
All of those things have taken place in 12 months. Can you quite grab that?
Wait. What about the authoritarianism of the Biden administration with all of the censorship during the COVID years and how the government, the FBI, embedded itself in YouTube? That was Biden. That wasn't Trump. What about them going after conservatives and asking and, going after conservatives when these conservatives were going to the schools and saying, you know what? They don't want drag queen day at the schools. They don't want the education to be pushing gender dysphoria. And the Biden administration went after them, saying that they were domestic terrorists. Why doesn't she say that? Because she wants to just cherry pick. Welcome to Davos. This is why conservatives need to push back. This is why I'm doing this channel. This is why I'm doing these videos. Because you need people that push back on these types. Because they want to erode your civil liberties. Illegal immigration was illegal. And they need to get out. Period.
What does it take to create equality, a true sense and experience of safety, of security? All of that has been literally destroyed in 12 months. And I have many friends in the United States. I've lived there. There are many
Really?
Really?
Who invaded Ukraine? Putin. Under what president in the United States did that happen under? Biden. Safety and security was demolished by Trump. Safety and security in Europe was demolished by Biden because of being weak. See, this is gobbledygook. Just spinning the normal socialistic rhetoric in Orange Man bad. People need to push back. It's about God, country, and family, and making sure that you protect the Enlightenment, the foundation. The foundation of the Enlightenment. Life, liberty, and property. But you got Mondami that wants to erode it and bring Marxism to the world. Right? What's wrong? Didn't Biden do something wrong? I didn't see her say anything about Biden and how idiotic he was in terms of pushing back on Putin with the war in Ukraine. Biden failed miserably. And because the NATO was so weak, they weren't willing to fight back. And now the Americans have spent billions and billions and billions of dollars to prop up Zelensky. But it's all Trump's fault, right? It's all Trump's fault, according to Davos.
People, black people, and the fear that under which they live every day is palpable. So It's everywhere. And it's not just Donald Trump. You could believe that Donald Trump is brought us to them. No.
Wait, what about the illegal immigration, the mass immigration that's changing the dynamics of Europe, changing the dynamics of Germany, changing the dynamics of France, changing the dynamics of the UK? And these three nations are in debt. Everyone's complaining about it. See, if you have unfettered immigration, you change the society. Do you want Germany to be Islamabad? I don't think that Germany's economic prowess would continue.
For more than 8 years, Amnesty International has been denouncing the slow but true spread of authoritarian practices throughout Europe. Emergency legal decisions have become normalized. Policing has become grounded on practices and including linked to surveillance and facial recognition that have led to many abuses. Sure. Attacks on non-discrimination have become very commonplace. And what do we have to say about other places, such as Iran, for instance, where thousands of people have lost their life in the last week, combating one of the most cruel authoritarian regimes. So we are all being impacted.
Yeah, but the only way to stop the Iranian bullshit is for the United States to decapitate the Ayatollah, which we should have done last year. But Trump was afraid.
Practices around the world. There is no easy solution to it. It's not just disrupting Donald Trump. It's not just resisting Donald Trump. It is also looking at our own society and unpacking the dynamic that have made those authoritarian practices possible, the fears, the anxieties, including over AI, and how do we tackle it? I think that's the key question. So, I mean, there is no doubt that it is unchecked. There is no doubt that it is everywhere right now. The key question that we need to ask ourselves is, what do we do about it? Because makes no mistake, authoritarian practices lead to very bad things for a lot of people. And when it becomes a global phenomena, it leads to what we saw in 1940. So we really need, it is incumbent upon us to combat authoritarian practices wherever we are. We do not need to be in New York. We do not need to be in Paris. We do not need to be in Davos. We can combat authoritarian practices in our village, in our communities, in our families, and we must combat it, because if we don't, there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that the destination will not be 2050. Let's be very clear. We will not get to 2050.
Yes, you raised a very great point. Yeah, clap if you want to. Go ahead.
Yeah, clap if you want to. Yes, liberal. Nice, liberal.
You just mentioned the authoritarianism in the United States and the cruel regime in Iran. Well, what do you make of Donald Trump threatening strike? He doesn't like Iran, right? So that's one authoritarian figure taking on another regime. And then what happened in Venezuela? Can you, does that
literally, listen to this stupid, literally, this guy that doesn't know how to cut his hair, but at least he's wearing a tie, is comparing Trump to the Ayatollah? You fucking an idiot.
I can fully understand why many of my friends and colleagues from Venezuela have a lot of reluctance to denounce what was an act of aggression against Venezuela. And maybe if I was Venezuelan, I will say, yeah, maybe it's not great for international law, but wow, 150 political prisoners have been released. So this is the reality. This is the messy world we live in. But do we need to sign a pact with evil in order to get something that we believe is going to be okay? And do we have any historical evidence of that kind of acts? Well, we have just Afghanistan here. Do we have a lot of evidence where this kind of foreign aggression against the country is bringing lots of betterment in the long term for people? Actually, I don't have a lot of evidence to it. So I think I'm going to resist being forced into a corner where I need to make a choice. And I want us to create and to claim the space of denouncing both. Denouncing US aggression on Venezuela and denouncing the crimes against humanity that have been committed by the Maduro regime against its own people. And that we need to be held accountable for. But that is not going to happen in a New York prison. It should happen in a Venezuelan prison, and it should render account to his people, not to God knows who, in fact, in New York.
Well said. Thank you so much.
Really well said. Really?
Read your mind. If anyone wants to chime in on the answer, you don't necessarily have to go with the question I gave. If you want to, follow up on what's been said, that's fine. But Professor, go ahead. Do you want to follow up on that? Because I want to ask you about climate change and where we're going. Or did you want to comment on what Agnes said? Yeah, please.
I mean, I know it's not very Davos, but I think at some level we actually have to talk about politics.
Right.
I mean, when you talk about public policy, we need to talk about the politics that make public policy.
Right.
When we talk about the long struggle for various types of rights in the United States, we have to talk about the political forces that conducted that struggle and who their opponents are. And though I think your point is right about the fragility of rights regimes and how quickly they can be broken. They're a little bit like ice. It takes a while to grow, and then you can break it. But we shouldn't underestimate the extraordinary persistence with which right-wing politics in the United States since the civil rights movement of the 1960s, which is the truly convulsive upheaval in American democracy that still is working its way through our society today. Right from that moment onwards, a counter movement began that is now finding its success. And we are hosting them here, and we are going to sit with them, and they are the legitimate and bona fide heirs of that generation, including the president himself and his family. And the very least we can do is speak openly about the history of the Klan and the history of the lynching and the history of Jim Crow and the history of segregationism and its apologists running all the way through to the 90s and the 2000s, who are deep inside the Republican Party. And I say this as a Democrat who lives in a highly segregated city, so this is not just about party politics. Racism in America can't be reduced to that. But we need to be clear about who it is has been trying to make change. And who it is who's been trying to do the opposite and to undo it. And those cultures of violence that we see in ICE, they come from somewhere. Anyone who's spent any time in America knows that people have reason
Wait
to
a minute. The Democratic Party has pushed a policy of illegal immigration, has pushed a policy of reducing capitalism and promoting socialism. And you have the Republican Party that is pushing back on that. So, wait a minute. He's trying to demonize. He believes in socialism. He believes in this idea of Marxism and not capitalism. He seems to believe the idea of a democracy that can erode your constitutional freedoms versus a constitutional republic where your property rights and your civil liberties are protected under a constitution. Once again, a fucking liberal. At Davos.
Reason to fear the police. As a white guy, I've never felt this before, but since I've lived in the United States, I've known, at least around the edges, what it means to fear people in uniform. Because it's capricious, and it's hyper-masculine, and it's deliberately violent, and it's deliberately abusive, and it's simply a fact that we have lived with in the United States forever, right? So at that level, this isn't new, but what's radical about it is just how uninhibited, how empowered, how shameless it is, and how little resistance, frankly, there has been to what's been going on. The big hope of the midterm elections in November, and everyone has just got their fingers crossed, the democracy will work and they will deliver a giant, crushing rejection. Right. Because American society has an overwhelming majority of decent people who, even if they are conservative, hate the sight of giant, overgrown bully boy men hurling women to the ground and abusing children. It isn't popular. It's one of the weird things about it. It's not actually a proper authoritarianism, populism in that sense. It's quite sectional. It's very, very strange what's going on. But yeah, let's talk about climate.
Yes.
Do these people also deny the climate? Yes, they do. In a staggering way, and in a way which has the same qualities, right? Because this time around, they haven't just politely withdrawn from the Paris Accords, which is Trump first one, right? Very gradually. He says cheerio, and then finally they exit in 2020. No, this time around, they've left every single UN organization, including the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change.
Maybe Uber governments should be abolished.
Conservative American president in the late 1980s. And then in the Maritime Organization, we know where there was an effort to clean up one of the great hard-to-abate sectors, which is maritime transport. We know they used literally mafioso methods of going into the negotiations and picking off the representatives of small countries and threatening them with personal sanctions, which is ruinous to anyone who moves around the world, right? Because it basically means you lose access to your bank, to your phone, you can't function. And they threatened the representatives of the smallest states so as to create a blocking veto minority that prevented us from moving rapidly towards the decarbonisation of shipping, where we actually had organized, let's be clear, organized first mover business groups were pushing that. That has been one of the projects of this organization. And this American government that we are hosting, who has a house on the promenade celebrating 250 years of God knows what, those people deliberately sabotaged these negotiations. We are still going to sit with them. I'm going to chair a meeting with Lutnet tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon.
Oh, wow.
Like, I am going to do my job as chair, but we should be clear about who it is we're dealing with. And they are taking those tactics of intimidation and personal threat into the climate space. And that is the reality that we're dealing with at this moment.
Thank you so much. Very much appreciate the passion of the panel. Taylor, I'm going to come to Australia, and it's still on public policy. You wear many hats. You're also, working on a lot of youth initiatives as far as the future of youth is concerned.
The previous panelist saying, what's America really celebrating for the 250 years of God knows what? You know what the 250 years means? Abolishing the king. Making sure that we are built on a foundation of the Enlightenment by John Locke. That's what that means. That's what that means. It means about life, liberty, and property rights. It means a constitutional republic. And it means don't fuck with us. That's what it means. God knows what. Liberalism, socialism is wrong. Is just wrong. Because what it does is it will erode the Enlightenment. So that's what we're celebrating. We're celebrating our prowess, and there's nothing wrong with our exercising our hegemonic power. Because guess what? Germany would if they had it. The UK did exercise their hegemonic power when they had it. France exercised their hegemonic power when they had it. Let's not be stupid about this. Let's not be naive.
I want to ask you about the policy in Australia where under 16s are banned from social media. Moving forward to 2050, is that, they're saying they're doing it because they're protecting the youth, and that's where your work is. How are you viewing that dynamic?
What?
Feel free to be as passionate as the rest of our panelists.
No, I have to say it's a really good sign when you're on a panel and you get so enthralled with what someone else is saying that you lose all comprehension for the fact that you're about to have to talk. Look, I think I request the grace of the room as I navigate what, at least in Australia, is a very political question. As someone who runs a non-partisan organisation, so humour me as I do some acrobatics. Look, I think that the social media ban policy in Australia is an excellent example of long-termist looking policy that maybe fails to look at the broader system. Now, if we break that down into three elements, you can think participation, policy, and people. So from a participation perspective, it maybe wasn't best practice the way that it was done. It was moved through incredibly quickly from a lot of the youth networks that I work with. They didn't feel adequately engaged, and given that it is a youth-centered policy, that's a fascinating feature of this policy that's come to be. And the impact of that is not just on the outcome and the policy itself, which I'll get to in a second, but it erodes a sense of engagement and that civic infrastructure that we've spoken about. And I think that comes back to what are the things that we watch silently and allow to happen. Because as an Australian who feels way off in the corner away from the US, I've been trying to take it very seriously to say, what of what I'm seeing over here do I see in small doses in my own country? And it's a fascinating thing to think about. The second thing that I would say is on the policy itself. Do we need to get young people off social media? I would say unequivocally yes. I don't have an objection to that concept because I imagine in 2050 we'll use social media the same way we do many other drugs. I don't know many deeply happy, joyful, and fulfilled people who spend a large amount of time on social media. That being said, is it a systemically viewing policy that's looking at all of the factors to keeping someone safe online, which is the skills, your ability to interpret mis and disinformation, your ability to build the supportive relationships if and when something damaging does happen online? And as a woman who spent enough time on the internet, I can tell you, it's probably, if you spend time on the internet for the duration of your life, at some point you will see something that is damaging to you psychologically in one way or another. And we need the skills, we need the relationships, we need the support networks in order to address that. And at this point, that policy in isolation, without the systems view, does not deliver on that. I have hopes and ambitions that we can build that around it, but it's an interesting, maybe hamstring of the policy as it stands. And then you've got to look at the people factor. When we're leaving people without the systemic support, the blame game will inevitably start to happen. And so what we need to be doing is trying to set ourselves up for success from the beginning, thinking about who's involved in this decision-making process. It's a heartbreaking reality that democracy done well is slow, but it is that upfront investment for long-term payoff. And it comes back to the central truth of its short-termism as the drug. We want the payoff, we want it quick, and we go for the sugar hit immediately. But what we really need to do is invest in the kind of robust policy and processes that can stand the test of time and be safeguarded against some of the frightening things on our horizon.
Thank you so much for that, Arjun. Let me Arjun, so I wanted to ask you about artificial intelligence and some worries about a divide that is growing. I mean, your company is still, you're assisting enterprise, giving enterprise solutions to companies for artificial intelligence. And my question to you is, do you share in that worry with respect to inequality, to where, as we move forward to 2050, those who have the resources and have access to AI will be far outpacing those that don't have the resources to access that? What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, information is going to be democratized through the use of AI. You can access, if you have systems like Grok or Gemini, you're going to be able to distill information much quicker, learn things much faster. So if you use it correctly, it's a democratization of information. The problem comes in is that the countries and the companies that are running these LLMs will have control. So if they are not holding true to democratic values or constitutional republic values, it may be problematic. I'm very concerned about AI in a surveillance state. Now, there will be haves and have-nots in terms of the ones that are able to gain assets because of a growing stock market that's tied to the AI development. Ones that are not invested will not benefit, and therefore the K economy will start to continue on, and there's going to be more divergence between the haves and the have-nots. But in terms of access of information, that's going to be democratized. Thank you for asking. I appreciate it.
It's a very relevant question. So let me just start by saying something that I think hopefully most of us can agree with. Technology and AI is an amplifier of a set of intents and culture we choose to program it with. It's not AI making decisions, it is a set of values we as a society choose to align the system. And I think
Right.
that fundamentally.
Right, exactly. So if you set up your systems that are socialistic, that are communistic, that are Marxist, that are anti-enlightenment, guess what? It's going to amplify it. So isn't it really important to have God, country, and family? Isn't it really important to maintain the ideals of John Locke? Oh, yeah. The answer is yes.
We want to set up for society in pursuit of this new model in the lead up to 2050. I think that, again, this requires long-term thinking. There is a lot of short-termism right now, right? Like CEOs are optimizing for the next quarter. There is a temptation to optimize for the next election. And what the movement calls for is some statesmanship and long-term thinking to design what are the policies and systems we want that actually can perpetuate. And once we program the AI with it, it's going to amplify that. If we don't change the incentive structure that had been designed for the last few decades with a certain economic model, we're going to end up with concentration of wealth. More importantly, and we're going to end up with concentration of agency, because fewer people are going to make most of the decisions that get amplified 10x larger by these systems.
Yep.
Things that used to take 5 years now can happen in 6 months with AI. So there is a need for conscientious long-term thinking, which is I think a moment that is here and now, and not a problem we can afford to keep the can down the road 5-10 years. So that's my part of that.
Thank you so much for that. All right, so those are the specific questions. Now we're going to go, round robin. We've got a few more minutes where we get our audience involved. Before the World Economic Forum began, WEF did, here in Davos, WEF did release a report on global risks based on surveys, and like a top 10 or a top 20. The number one, based on surveys, the risk that respondents indicated was geopolitical tensions, right? And we've touched on that already. But within that top 10 was misinformation and disinformation. And I guess how your worldview is shaped, in addition to your education, background, and so on, is the information that you're filtering in. And there is a worry that as we get closer to 2050, misinformation and disinformation is gathering steam. So my question to the panel, just one after the other, is how to combat that. Because even with AI and the deepfakes and so on and so forth, this stuff is getting more complex, and social media also has a role in that as well. So, Zainab, how do you think we can effectively combat misinformation and disinformation as it spreads?
It's super important. It's at the heart of awareness and knowledge to understand what misinformation and disinformation is. And it's also relatively important to touch upon the fact that how misinformation and disinformation can be categorized for certain set of information in a specific region is not the same or not explained the same way to another region. So there's always the different standards set around how we defined these terms or any other term. But yes, what we can do, ground realities are usually so different than what we see on our screens. And of course, we are so used to seeing our screens that we forget to touch and reach out to people who are on the ground, who are living the life. I have lived under conflict. I have been a refugee in several countries, and people-to-people relationship has always been extremely different than what they portrayed into words, either newspaper back in the day or now, I'm not too old though, or now the social media, that you would see people come, you would see someone new come to you, talk to you with a prejudgment of a situation, not trying to understand you, but just to impose their ideal reality in their head on you. And that judgment is created through not knowing really what misinformation and disinformation is, and just reading the text or the words in front of you and following through, oh, okay, this is correct. There are things, there are contexts. Without having context, you cannot really understand the situation. So to fight back the misinformation or disinformation in any region in the world, I believe we can take several actions. One, to engage those local voices into these global platforms that we are all seeing. If you don't have the local voices, if you really don't understand what the ground living lifestyle is, let alone knowing in general what the tradition or what the ruling authority there is, you cannot really understand the difference between the different subjective opinions that you can have towards a story. Let's say in a village far, I would give examples for my country because that's where I come from, and I don't feel okay with giving examples from other countries. That would be me questioning myself first. So in villages in my country, there are some traditional norms and systems that allow people to respect elders with their decisions and listen to them. And that's basically a transaction created in that society. Governments changed, interventions happened, so much happened, war happened, but that transaction between the elders and its community, or that tradition or naturally established relationship between that community is always there. It's there till today. When governments fell, people didn't have anyone to go to, or an office or an authority to go to get a letter for their employment or anything else. And what they would do is rely on that elder of the community that they had selected to get their words and go present that to another village or wherever they wanted to go. So, but when it comes to international understanding of those ground realities, we think that these people don't like systems, whereas they have been felt throughout history, and they don't feel that anyone responded to their needs.
Oh, come on.
That was imposed on them was able to sustain itself. So when you don't understand these small nuances around someone's understanding of life, which has been truly different from you, everyone in this room is truly, truly privileged. I myself am very privileged. I wish instead of me there was a woman from a country who is under conflict, who has been stripped of all their life, who has lost family, sitting here and talking to you guys instead of me. And I truly, truly wish that happens one day in any platform like Davos, so that it's not us versus them, or someone going through all this process and formality to explain these nuances around stories, culture, and inclusion, or any other thing that we want to raise. So that's where we can fight misinformation and disinformation, to create context, to understand, to listen to people, to not come with a prejudgment or think that what we have been taught through academia or any platform.
Then why did that professor that doesn't know how to wear a tie make the statements that he's making about Trump? Or what about the female that was speaking just before him about how bad Trump is? Doesn't seem like they're even listening to her. Maybe Trump's right. Maybe Trump is right. Ever thought of that? No, Orange Man must be bad.
It's correct for the whole world. It's not. You have to listen to the people. If it's war, if it's anything, just those people, if they say we don't want your system, that's their decision. So you cannot impose your reality on them. And that's where the whole divide increases if you keep imposing, if the one region of the world keeps imposing on the rest of the world.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much for that. Agnes,
the problem comes in is that socialism doesn't work. Marxism doesn't work. So you got to fight back because it metastasizes like a cancer. What about property rights? What about the oil that was developed by American companies in Venezuela and it was taken away from them? It happened also in Iran. Happened in Iraq too, and in Libya. Happens every time you have some sort of problem where you have some sort of dictatorial rule or theocratic regime or socialism run amok. Look at Cuba. Yeah, a real prosperous environment. For the world to move forward and be prosperous, it's about embracing the foundation of the Enlightenment. It's that simple. So she's wrong. She's wrong. The guy that doesn't know how to wear a tie is wrong. Wrong. Davos, open forum of the wrong.
I have to tell you, I had a debate with a family member who didn't believe the amnesty data I was giving them about the issues going on in Venezuela, about the Maduro regime. So I really want to throw this to you. If I'm talking to somebody who's educated and has, doesn't believe data I'm giving them, how do we combat misinformation and disinformation? How do we do this?
Education, I think, is certainly key. Literacy on apprehending what people can read on social media and internet. And I think in many curriculum right now, it is starting. So I'm hoping that there will be, at least in two generations from now, I think we will have people far better able to tackle what they are reading on social media. Look, I think we need the holistic approach to technology, and it means the regulation of the business model of social media. The notion that some hateful information, some kind of information gets much more spread and circulation because they are more likely to resonate in some part of the people's brain. I mean, that is what needs to be tackled. It is the entire business model of the big tech companies that we need to be able to challenge. That can be done through better regulation. We did attempt to do that in Europe through the AI Act that was adopted last year, and for the last 12 months, the president of the United States has waged a war against the regulation of social media and the regulation of AI. Why? Because of this, the kind of techno state that he's trying to establish. So we always go back to the necessity of public policies and governments being prepared to enact policy for the betterment of people, not for the sake of few profit and greed, in fact, of people. Why do we need trillionaires in this world? Can I ask? Do we need trillionaires? We don't even need billionaires, frankly. So, I mean, that is part of what you're talking about, that misinformation, disinformation. We need to tackle media ownership. Over the last 10 years or so, we've gotten to a process of heavy concentration of, I'm not talking about social media, I'm talking about actual media ownership by a fewer number of people. That needs to be tackled through public policies and better regulations. Same with the politicization of media and the fact that more political or people with a political agenda are using their ownership of media to be pushing for such an agenda. That should be tackled as well, in the name of, first of all, our rights to freedom of expression and freedom of information, the fight against censorship. All of those things matter. But ultimately, we need to be able to resist. We need to be able to say no. We need to be able to have elected officials who are prepared to fight the fight, including against very powerful corporate actors. It's an integrated world. We are not going to just pick this information and make it separated from every other ills that we are confronting at the moment with respect to authoritarianism. Just fighting that won't bring us to away from extinction and to the annihilation that some leaders are so keen for us to get into.
Professor, I mean, climate is an issue that is, there's a big information war going on there with a lot of folks that deny climate change and so on and so forth. So I guess, I'm just using that as an example, but generally, how do you think we should approach this fight against misinformation and disinformation?
Maybe I might speak instead as an educator,
right? As a professor, yeah.
And
wear a tie.
I mean, I have to say, I feel more uncertain about what I'm doing and what the rationale of what I'm doing is than ever before in my career. I'm old enough to remember pencil and paper. I vividly remember the advent of personal computers, the laptop, the internet. These were all huge shocks and overwhelmingly positive. And I still cling to the idea that AI also, in some senses, is overwhelmingly positive. It enables us to do things we just simply couldn't comprehend before. I have colleagues who are deep skeptics who want just bans, blanket bans on AI and humanities education. I'm not in that position. But I use it every day myself. In fact, I have a kind of routine of forcing myself to ask crazy questions from my high-end AI, which I couldn't possibly answer myself in reasonable time. And yet it gives me a kind of B+ answer to a crazy question right now. And that's amazing. I can get several B+ answers to really wacky questions. But I actually have guilt because, you couldn't ask a human to answer these questions back to back. And my machine just runs away like a kind of eager dog and comes back with these answers. So for somebody like me who just loves exotic knowledge, this is a huge gift. Really, chapeau, it's amazing. But what is it that we are doing? And I both of you said education's part of the solution. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what is it? And I'm increasingly, I love the village example. Of course, it doesn't generalize. The problem is we don't live in villages anymore. We live in these gigantic communities of hundreds of millions of people. I
still do.
But increasingly few. Right? And urbanization is the trend we've passed when the majority of people live in urban or suburban spaces now worldwide. And I'm only saying that because in the end, I end up thinking again and again that there is something about the embodiment of knowledge. There is something about the directly interpersonal, which is the only really good answer to this question. And then so one of the questions as an educator, it's a really old-fashioned question. I actually start asking myself is, what is it that I want my students to remember? Not to know, but to remember, to take into their bodies and keep there. Because that's going to be the prompting bit of them. That's the bootstrap. Those are the instincts. That's the tastes, the creativity, the thing that triggers the clever question to the AI. And of course, in due course, AI will do this as well. But it seems to me that that's one thing that we really need to focus on in a way that I never thought I would be emphasizing. I've always been somebody who fled from memory practice. Why would you do that? You can just look it up. You're very good at Googling. Why? But I think with AI, the challenge is actually to know what we want inside ourselves. And then I think the other thing we presumably have to cultivate, this is the economist in me talking, is this is going to be demand-driven. If we're going to keep truth in circulation, people are going to have to want it. They are really going to have to want it. And if the fake stuff and the artificial stuff and the slop is no longer slop, but cordon bleu, let alone 3 Michelin, or just McDonald's, if that's the way your mind goes, right? We don't have a chance. So we're going to have some motivations for actually desiring truth. Even if it's hard, even if it's difficult to swallow, even if it's somebody else's truth that might actually turn out to be better than you. Those seem to me these chairs are lethal. If I actually fell over and die, first day, it's not a conspiracy, it's a chair. But those two things seem to me to be the new kind of educational purpose for me. It's A, what is it you want to know? Really want to have, and then where are you going to put it? You're going to put it inside yourself and keep it there. So maybe maybe learning and teaching now has to be a bit more like learning a language, in the way that a language remaps your brain, and the way that it becomes part of who you are and how you express yourself. The fact that we can all communicate in English up here, after all, is a flipping miracle.
Right.
Like maybe that's where we need to think about the deep answers to this question. But as I say, like I feel more confounded than ever before in my life on this issue.
So,
Thanks to you. Thanks to you and your mind-bending things you do.
So, yeah, I mean, earlier you were talking about youth and them staying on social media. So, what's your take on misinformation?
So I think as fourth speaker, this before the technical expert, I'll try and come at it from maybe building off what you just shared, which is I think the mis and disinformation is a rampant virus in a weakened system.
Yeah.
And so I think what we also need to think about is what is it within ourselves that makes us so ready to grab the polarizing slop or quarter that we're presented with. And that's the hard internal.
First of all, there's two aspects to this: misinformation, disinformation, or just poor quality of information. There's another category, just poor quality. The AI slop, I think, there's going to be a negative feedback loop where people will detach and not go to those sites that have lots of AI slop, because the quality isn't that good. All right. And I won't listen to a documentary that is generated by AI. I'll listen to a documentary that a human being actually took the effort to make. But there's lots of historical documentaries that are being produced that's just generated from AI. I just immediately turn it off. So there's going to be a negative feedback loop, I suspect, with the AI slop. But we've had propaganda ever since mankind. So we're really talking about an issue of propaganda. You may call it misinformation or disinformation, but it's propaganda. And there is a new book out there called Cool War by Maloney, Sean Maloney, Dr. Sean Maloney, that's talking about the use of X, the use of systems on the internet to signal between adversaries. You ever wonder why our nuclear subs will pop up and there is some sort of signal that's produced that people can pick up? Even though we can go dark, we can be completely stealth, we do it on purpose. You ever wonder why the transponders for certain planes in certain regions are turned on that are military aircraft? Because we're sending a signal to Russia or to China. There's these little signals that are popping up. We can do this, we can do that. Be wary, right? And sometimes it's a positive signal, sometimes it's a negative signal. But all the truthers out there think they know something that the government is doing. They're not realizing that they're doing it on purpose to create a stir, to create disinformation, or to create a signal. So it's part of what is called the Cool War. Not the Cold War, the Cool War. Because in the Cold War, it was more about espionage. It was more about secrecy. This, in the information war, there is signaling that's taking place. Either false signaling or real signaling. So, overuse of AI in social media, if it's sloppy, I think there's going to be a negative feedback loop, and people will move away from it. But there's an over-reliance of it. There can be an over-reliance in AI in terms of education. And when that happens, people aren't going to be able to think for themselves, and they're not going to be able to write. And so you just take advantage of them. Let the people do that. And you will be able to take advantage of the situation. For the ones that know how to rewrite and think. Why do we assume that the whole world deserves freedom? Why do we assume the whole world deserves prosperity? Why? Some people just don't deserve it.
Systemic policy solutions and technical responsibility and a whole bunch of other things. But I think we need to do the hard and uncomfortable thing of looking within ourselves and seeing what has this society cooked within myself that makes me so ready to believe that thing that makes me raw, like it gives you that feeling. It is kind of addictive. And I've gotten myself trapped in that before. The algorithm has gotten me because it's feeding me that exact flavor of what I want that makes me feel like I'm right and that person that I want to argue with is wrong. And so it is a responsibility. And I'm so hesitant because I think the climate movement has really suffered from this. The whole individuals need to recycle and that's how you'll save the planet. But I do think that on this mis and disinformation piece, there is a huge responsibility that we need to have to keep our internal world in check and sort of the internal system that we're
Like our Supreme Court said, the answer to disinformation or misinformation isn't curtailment of speech, it's more speech. All right? And it's the ones that can articulate and use logic and proofs that will win out the day. It's about truth. If you're worried about misinformation and disinformation, it's about truth. And if you use logic and you have data to back it up that can be verified, then you win the day.
The place where we don't seek the polarization and where we reject the algorithm serving that up to us. But I defer to the technical expertise.
Arjun, and a lot of tech with talking with misinformation, disinformation. I would love to hear your thoughts as well. How we combat this with AI playing such a big role and going forward to 2050.
So I will say that I have a tendency to try to model the world in systems. It has a beautiful quality of generalizability and scalability. And on this matter of misinformation,
Life is chaotic, not deterministic. And if you try to bottle life up in into a box, right? And you think that you can use cybernetics or AI or whatever term you want to use to be able to control it, it's not going to work. Why? Because it's Jurassic Park. Life finds a way. All right? It's chaotic. It's indeterministic. You can't bottle it up. It's through a free market and free speech and all of those great things that we have in our Constitution that will win out in the end. You may dislike it, but it will win in the end. So don't worry about it. No, we got to have an AI to control everything and have cybernetics. And if there's misinformation or disinformation, we'll shut them down. Look at what happened with what the government was trying to do during the crisis in 2020, where they were shutting down YouTube channels like mine, reducing the reach, and promoting a certain agenda with the inoculations. And not allowing people to express with proofs, like me, like what I did, that proved that there was a bioweapon. And that there were a lot of problems going on. You had a government that was trying to curtail freedom of speech. Now, if you use cybernetics, if you use AI to curtail speech because you think it's misinformation or disinformation, you may be actually, in the end, curtailing the truth. And that's exactly what fucking happened in 2020. So the only answer to this isn't using cybernetics, not using AI, not curtailing freedom of speech. It's more speech, more chaos, more. Because in the end, the truth will come out.
The system that scales, in my opinion, is accountability. I think fundamentally any technology, be it AI or whatever else, is ultimately reflecting the architect and creator of the system. And I don't just mean a model creator. I mean, once you have a model, you give it a set of system prompts. So you give some instructions, you're creating a system ultimately. It's just scalable intelligence at that idea. And people need to be accountable for what they create. It's that simple. There are two versions of this I can give an example of. I think this social media world didn't have that accountability. I think the platforms and the creators were generally shielded from the accountability for various reasons. And I think it led to this almost uncontrolled propagation of mass reach and speed combined with information that people didn't take accountability of. And I think there are some serious consequences to that we all see. And I don't think we should do that with AI. I think systems that people create, institutions create, countries create, should take accountability for what they do. I don't think it's the agent that's responsible. It's the legal entity or the human that created that is accountable. And I think we don't think about it enough that way. That's my point of view, right? I do also want to just address something you said that I thought was you very eloquently put the role of education in it. I think increasingly the shift that's happening is one from where people are doing work to one where people are describing what the work needs to be done as.
Yes.
And we are all moving towards a world. You can pick the time horizon, but over some time horizon, the opportunity is for everybody to be an architect. And
use AI to create automation, to create means of obtaining information, digesting information quicker, in means of as a tool, but don't use AI as a means to try to control society. Because if you create that, you're creating a surveillance state. When you create that, you will have an uber government, you'll have some sort of government that will curtail your freedoms. It's really simple. It's a tool. That's all. That's all it is. But if you start using AI to like go, well, the establishment thinks, so therefore, if you say anything against the establishment, well, that's not how science works. It's a dialectic. When you impede the dialectic, you don't have freedom anymore, especially in freedom of thought. And this is the problem with AI. If you have a government that's using AI to curtail your speech under the auspices of, oh, it's misinformation or disinformation, then how do you counter the government narrative? Maybe the government narrative's wrong. Maybe climate change is wrong. Maybe our understanding of how the immune system is wrong. No, the architects know better. This is the problem with the technocrats. They think they know better and therefore create systems that will make society more in harmonious means. Not realizing that you can't bottle up Jurassic Park. Life is chaotic and it's indeterministic. You can't model it.
the most important thing that I think we can learn in the educational system is how to describe a system. And I love the liberal arts educational system for that reason.
The more freedom, the more degrees of freedom, the more variables in a system, the more degrees of freedom, the more chaotic it can become, especially if you have feedback loops. So you have these degrees of freedom in society, in these social systems or economic systems, governmental systems. And you have lots of feedback, lots of freedom of these variables, degrees of freedom. And so the only way to really model it that's within the time span of humanity, all right, of the architect, is to have a parsimonious model. And when you have a parsimonious model, guess what? Over time, it's going to drift away from reality. Oh, and then you can just reparameterize it. But the thing is it's still parsimonious. You can't model chaos if it's indeterministic. Deterministic chaos, it's a little bit It's still hard, but it's a little bit more doable. But indeterministic chaos? No chance in hell. Never will happen.
It teaches you how to describe. I think physics is a beautiful modeling of the natural world. I think philosophy is a beautiful modeling of the societal world.
See, this guy doesn't even know what the hell he's talking about. Newtonian physics, where it's deterministic. What happens when it's indeterministic? How are you going to deal with it? Where you're working with probabilities and feedback loops. And after 1 or 2 time periods, things drift. What happens when the degrees of freedom are actually not stationary, but actually fluctuate? We'll use philosophy as a foundation. Tell me, what philosophy is actually, any philosophy, has actually proven the way mankind should be? Should we be stoic? Should we be cynical? Aristotelian? What should we be? Should we be egoistic? Should we be utilitarian? There's no answer. It's just a bunch of models. There's no real answer. Why? Because mankind is a chaotic system that's indeterministic. I should be up there talking because every single one of those panelists are a bunch of dipshits.
I do think that is a very important thing we need to learn to architect a world that we all are proud of.
Architect a world. See, what? That's code speak for cybernetics. That's code speak of top-down governance. That's code speak for a technocratic society. That's not about the Enlightenment. That's not about freedom of your life, the pursuit of, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. When it's modeled by a technocrat? Be careful of this.
Enjoying this so much. I have more questions, and that's your turn, ladies and gentlemen. So please, there we go. Here come the hands. So we'll just, introduce yourself and direct your question to anyone on the panel. I'm trying to be brief because there's a whole lot of people here that want to ask questions. Thank you.
Thanks, and we appreciate for coming and meeting. I am Japanese.
No kidding.
You are great, and so.
None of them said anything of real substance.
To Davos and driving force, your company is great. So I want to know your driving force.
Well, your driving force for being here at Davos.
A liberal driving force. No. Stick to the question. I hate when they do.
Hello, Manuela Forster from Germany, also the future medicine woman and diplomat.
I'll just answer the damn questions one-on-one. The thing is, the driving force of at least the panel that's up there, being technocratic, being socialistic, telling you on how to live your life. Now, the only thing that made any sense throughout that whole talk was that women need more education, especially in these underdeveloped countries. Everything else was horseshit.
Nations. So I'm an awakened starseed. Nowadays I talk about that, and from that perspective, with the cosmic wisdom and the higher consciousness level, I'm wondering why, when we want so much change, we are not talking more about spirituality and our sovereignty, which we can gain back through spirituality and practice of energetic leadership. Right. So what do you think about?
It's about God, country, and family. When you have those strong pillars, especially on the foundation of the Enlightenment, you have a prosperous society, and you have the ability to have cohesion. But when you have a smorgasbord of a bunch of legal immigrants coming into your borders, unfettered, you destroy your society. Look at what's happening to Europe. Look at what's happening to many states and cities in the United States because of the unfettered immigration policy of the Biden administration. It's about God, country, and family. Right there. Right there. But thank you for asking.
Your area to make people aware that they actually have the power inside of them. And only if you have the inner guidance and inner stability, you also can really decipher what's true and what's not true, because it comes with feeling, not with knowing.
I have to say, that is a very interesting question.
Yeah,
let's yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I have the mic. My name is Sidney Sampson. From Nigeria.
Hey, my brother. Go ahead.
My question goes to Kalamard and the Prof. And it's this, in an increasingly fragmented and polarized world where might now seems to be right, what role do you see multilateral global alliances playing in trying to balance these tensions? And how can they be strengthened to do that? Because I don't want to go to the other path, but that's the question. I hope you got it. Thank you.
Okay, I think should we start with those three first?
Multilateral didn't prevent Putin. Multilateral doesn't seem to be pushing back on China with trying to take Taiwan. Multilateral doesn't seem to be really solving the problem that we have with the drug running and the illegal immigration from the south of the Rio Grande. Your country, to have a country, you need to be able to control your currency and you need to be able to control your borders. It's really simple. And this whole power dynamic is about being fair. Now, when you have trade policies that aren't fair, do you think that the trade policies were fair before Trump? I mean, wake up, wake up. What about the unfair tariff policies that the EU, the European Union, set in motion before Trump? What about them sucking on the tit of the American taxpayer to bolster up NATO while these European countries were giving social programs to their citizens that the American taxpayers were subsidizing? Multilateralism? You really think we've ever had multilateralism? We've had a lot of people saying, we'll work with you, United States, but you got to give us billions of dollars. And maybe we'll do something. Maybe we'll have NATO if you give us billions of dollars so we can give free healthcare and free education to our citizens. Do you think that's fair? Do you think that's fair to the elderly in the United States? Do you think that's fair to the veterans of my country? No, of course not. Of course not. Why should my tax dollars pay for social programs in Germany? Multilateralism. Multilateralism has always been a failure. You can't even pass something in the UN. You have committees within the UN. You have councils that are run by countries that are run by dictators that have very poor human rights policies in the UN. And that's supposed to be a multilateral organization. Really think multilateralism is working? People need to wake up.
Your motivation for Davos, the spirituality question, and then the multilateralism, being able to address the issues you're seeing. So, who would like to? I guess you would direct it. The first question directed at you.
So, I mean, I think there might have been years in which the rationale for coming to Davos wasn't clear, but this isn't one of them. I mean, and it goes directly to your point about multilateralism. I mean, this is an unusually significant week because what's happening here, and it has also to do with the change of leadership at WEF, is that we have, in the form of Larry Fink, one of the absolutely key figures in the world of global finance, CEO, the dominant figure of BlackRock, a gigantic 13, $14 trillion plus asset manager. This is the new generation of global finance. If JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs were the 2008 star players, we're now in a new world. And he, through extraordinary efforts, has convened the most amazing gathering of both political and financial firepower. And it's quite obvious what it's for. It is I would say, maybe last ditch, certainly important effort to try and contain the impact of nationalist populism in the most powerful state in the world, the United States. Those are the stakes, no less than that.
Oh, BlackRock has a lot of ETFs. They were pushing for ESG. You remember in New York where they wanted to go, you can't buy a gas stove, you have to have an electric. Who was benefiting from that? You think it was individuals that had asthma? No. It was BlackRock. BlackRock was going to benefit from it because they were pushing their ETFs. And then all of a sudden there was a big pushback because of the Trump administration, and half of the United States decided that they didn't want the global, the global wokeism, and they had to retreat from ESG. Have you heard a lot about ESG now? No. But you hear a whole lot about you need to burn more fossil fuel for AI development. Don't trust BlackRock. Oh. BlackRock owns Blackstone. It was a spinoff. There's tentacles to it. And Blackstone owns, is it Blackstone? I always get those confused. The ones that I think it's Blackstone that owns the retail, the residential housing that they were trying to corner the market with. All right, whatever. But the point here is that you got to worry about Blackstone or BlackRock. All right, they're pushing an agenda, and they try to grow these funds that are pushing that agenda. But when the agenda doesn't seem to be able to get some traction, they'll back off. Now Trump's going after these companies that are buying up houses because they were trying to corner the market and jack up the price of the homes. All right? Well, he's saying you can't do that anymore. So of course, Fink is going to be, I don't like Trump. He's hurting my business model. He doesn't like ESG. He doesn't like us accumulating large swaths of homes. Now, either directly through BlackRock or through some sort of tangential entity like Blackstone. But the point here is that there's a global agenda to think a certain way, to move the money in a different way so people benefit. And he's promoting BlackRock? He is promoting BlackRock? Are you kidding me? That's like one step below George Soros.
Be the last effort, but this is an important moment, and the Europeans are clearly going to need this as a venue for discreet talks with the Americans over Greenland without having to be too far out in public. And that, no less, ladies and gentlemen, is what's up this week in this town. Is we're trying to figure that out. So that kind of answers your question. You don't need much personal motivation to witness it, and B, to contribute whatever you can to an honest conversation. I was very struck by Fink's remarks about how his project, and with the authority of BlackRock behind him, is to raise and to elevate the conversation and to the level of frankness, and also, whatever my remarks were about the Trump administration, I'm wholly committed to trying actually talk with American Republicans, which is not something I get the chance to do very often in New York, right? We live in bubbles. I'm very conscious of living in a liberal bubble. And this is the first time I actually get to encounter my own government. And on a stage. So those are these two questions are directly. I think this is true for very, very many of the people who are in the official delegations and so on are here because they are concerned with your question.
Thank you. Does anyone want to take a stab at the spirituality questions with respect to looking inward and that solving the issues that we're seeing? All right, Taylor, take a swing at it. Go ahead.
For me, what came up for me is that I have the privilege of living in Australia, which has the longest unbroken thread of human culture in the world. And we should be a world leader in thinking about the future, thinking intergenerationally, being connected with these incredibly deep wisdom systems of knowing, being, and doing, and the spiritual practices that surround that. And yet we find ourselves entirely detached from it.
The reason why is because your economy is a commodity. Selling iron ore and coal and stuff to China. That's your economy right there. It's resource extraction.
Had we never forgotten how to practice leadership in the way that First Nations people still do, and that they have for over 65,000 years, we'd be in an entirely different governance situation than we are right now. And so for me, so many of these sort of introspective prompts that I've been giving us tonight come to remembering what's at the core of our humanity, not starting to do something new, but remembering these incredible practices that, you know, First Nations people have never left. We just have forgotten, often in the halls of power, and let that slip out of our grasp. So I think that piece of how do we remember what's at the core of our humanity is we can't do that.
It's about competition. It's about military prowess. This concept of First Nation peoples, they've lost. They didn't have the technological or the war power to protect their land. No country has the right to anything. It is through diplomacy and economic prowess and military prowess that leads to the ability to have a nation. But when you start losing those, you may lose your country. Now, the first peoples of a region lost. The American Indian lost. The Aborigines in Australia lost. Neanderthal lost. Should we give up? Should we find out through genomic sequencing what people are the most related to the Neanderthals, and maybe we should just give up all of Europe to them because they were the first peoples? Stupid. You'll lose your country when you can't fight and protect it.
All right, got 9 minutes to go, so let's. All right, we've got a gentleman here. Okay, we've got so many hands up. All right, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Cottrell. I'm just about to graduate and I'm from France, and pardon my French. And I think we can all agree with the many points that were mentioned this evening. We're not the ones who need convincing, and at some point there was a case made on education, which is long term, and I wanted to ask if any of you had any idea about the how we could do this. For example, AI slop is slop, that it works, it's fun, people like it, and it has an effect. How do we fight this? The dopamine receptor that people just
you gotta detach.
Okay.
You gotta break the habit.
Phone in the front. Oh, okay. I guess the back is still getting some love. We'll get to you as soon as possible.
Hello, I have a mic here.
Yes.
So my name is Lia, I'm from Romania, from Bucharest, and I have a question for Professor Tus. I want to ask you, considering that you are at Columbia, and considering international students, but as well domestic students who get admitted into Ivy Leagues, what would be the first skill or the number one skill that a student needs to develop before getting into university in order to do well at the university and after university? Because I'm working in this field and for 15 years, and I've done research in the last 4 years, and I see a lot of students from very good schools and they don't achieve the type of success that they want, or they are successful only in their professional life, but not in the other part of their life. So they are on medication, they are depressed or anxiety, overwhelming and so on. Thank you.
Okay, I'm so sorry to make you walk. This gentleman, we have to get this gentleman in the front, right? He's had his hand up for quite a while. And he's very close to me. So, you know, I just want to make sure he asks his questions.
Thank you so much for giving me some attention. My name is Ep18 from London. And first of all, thank you so much for the fantastic insight. Really appreciate that. My question as a lawyer is very simple. The opposite of law is anarchy. How do you think and what is the take how strong the law is, and given a chance, if you think you can change one law which will bring a massive improvement, what that law going to be?
All right, thank you so much. So let's Arjun, I think you should take the dopamine question, the AI, the addiction part. If you want to take a step.
Gotta break the addiction.
We'll have
Stop using it. Stop using it.
Good. And just to make sure I get the question right, it's how do we deal with the AI slop that leads to this creating a lot of addictive effects?
Right.
Addictive effect, yeah. Listen, I think a lot of in my opinion, it's not the addictiveness of the problem and accountability of the problem. I keep going back to this. I think there is a beautiful quality to addictive material that is constructive. I think there is a destructive quality to addictive material that is
Stupid. How do you stop the addictiveness of cocaine? Stop using it. I mean, I tell you, don't trust a technocrat. I mean, these people, how the fuck did they get on stage? You can see throughout this whole video how I nitpicked and tore apart their argument. Now, you may not like how I do it, but literally, they don't have a strong foundation of logic. He literally said the addictive behavior of AI isn't an issue. What? What? Your kids are getting stupid because of it. Oh, he's a technologist. He makes money doing it. Lovely.
benignly a waste of time, but also more destructively spreading misinformation. And I fundamentally think tracing that back to the provenance of the creators will automatically introduce an incentive for people to stop producing things that are destructive. And I think we don't have that with social media, but I think we have the opportunity to do that with AI.
Thank you. Professor, there's one skill that a student should have to, have success or something.
I mean, so many people are interested in different ways, but it's a sustained attention.
Yes, sustained attention. That's a great, that's true. And the ability to think and not be dependent on others. And oh, by the way, have a affiliation to the Enlightenment and not Marxism.
That's the fundamental thing, the ability to sustain prolonged serious attention to a text, to read, to think, to problem, solve, to work at a problem. That doesn't necessarily mean like just strapping yourself to the desk and lashing yourself. It means learning your own internal rhythms. Like, where does your spirit go? Where does your mind wander to? How do you contain that? How do you manage it? And that, I think, is the absolutely key thing. And it is rare, and it's difficult, and it takes habit, and it's a kind of training. It's like learning to play an instrument or perform well in sport. It's that kind of habit, and
it's about endurance, mental endurance, or reading endurance. Like, for example, I'm reading 2 books right now, right? Most people out there can't read from the first page to the last page because of their attention span sucks. All right? I'm reading something that's very scholarly about letters from Cicero and how the Roman Republic is falling apart, and the new book by Daniel Jurgen, The New Map. All right? This is dealing with oil and geopolitics and energy and whatnot, right? But most people out there, they couldn't read this because they don't have the mental endurance anymore because of the doom scrolling AI, social media has made you stupid.
And it requires a kind of bravery because you have to be willing to be lonely, you have to be willing to be on your own, you have to be on your own with your own thoughts, not constantly just in the loop with the thing that's feeding your prejudice, but actually pursuing your own thread. So that would be challenge students to read for half an hour probably, then 45 minutes, then an hour, and so on from there. Once they've gotten up to several hours, they're already in the Super League.
All right, thank you. I guess let me give you a chance to ask the question.
Right. Neil Ferguson stated students need to plug away from their electronics and go into what he's called the cloister. And the cloister is basically an environment where you are building that endurance, where you're in the cloister for 8 or 10 hours. Now, medical students have to do this, or law students have to do this. But the sad thing is that many higher level of academia, the undergrad doesn't have the skill sets, they don't have the endurance to be able to do an 8 or 10 hour trek in the cloister. Just fact. You just look at the students that are coming out of school today. They don't have an attention span more than 45 minutes, let alone 8 hours.
What would the laws, anarchy?
I don't know, law on death penalty in too many countries, law on female guardianship in South Africa and Afghanistan, law that prevent women from accessing education in Afghanistan, law that declares that your support to Palestinian rights is amounting to terrorism and must be...
It seems like it's laws that are already figured out through a constitutional republic. And it's on the foundation of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, property rights. See, it goes back to that. Constitutional republic, ideals of the Enlightenment, God, country, and family. That's, if you have laws that are aligned with those ideals, you're going to be okay.
Stopped. Laws that describes an organization like Extinction Rebellion as a threat to national security. I have so many laws that I want to get rid of it, that will make the world a better place. Many.
I think you might be the last question because we've only got 3 minutes to go. So.
Hello everyone, my name is Nahid Azul. I am the president of the Syrian National Dome. Nationality is Syrian and it is political organization. Actually, my question is to Ms. Amnesty and also speaking about refugees as well. When we see that we have more than 88 million refugees around the world, they are not welcomed, they are undermined, they are heavy burden on the whole international society. At the same time, you can see that perpetrators are doing their deeds openly with a authoritarian regime, and they don't fear any consequences, or or even a kind of punishment. What we see is just, the verbal denouncing, and in the worst scenario, just Mr. Trump bring somebody to uproot a dictator. So do you think there will be any kind of mechanism that can really and truly be applied to stop those authoritarian regimes before they go on and on in, grinding people, committing genocide, fleeing like Assad, just, he is enjoying the fortune in Russia, and also the Iranian regime and everybody else. Thank you.
All right, so you both get the last words in. Let me have you take a crack at that. You've got a minute, so but actually I really haven't seen enough to just jump on that. You get the last one.
Totally fine.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead.
Okay, we look think it's a fundamental question that you are asking. Are there mechanisms to hold them accountable? Are there mechanisms to prevent them from getting into power? I think there are, but there is no political will to implement them. Throughout the last 20 years, particularly the last 20 years, we have seen time and time again governments using double standards in order to protect some of those governments and denounce others, in order to make deals with Syria or Egypt and so on, while denouncing other governments. It is eating at any kind of rule-based principle system that we need to establish, the double standards, the rejection of any universal approach to how we see the world, how we protect rights, how we hold others accountable. That is killing the international system. That is killing any pretense of creating an international system. But the alternative, as you say, it's real anarchy. So the answer is not to destroy what doesn't work very well. There is absolutely no doubt that the global rule-based system of the last 8 years has left many people out, has made millions. I was in Syria, so I know the cruelty of that regime, and I cannot tell you enough how deeply, deeply touched I was by the family of the disappeared. This was the most cruel regime that has gone on and on and on and on. And we have plenty of examples like this around the world. The rule-based order was and is not perfect. Destroying it like Donald Trump is doing at the moment, like Putin is doing, like Netanyahu is doing, that is not the solution. Trying to tackle the limitations and the problem, trying to reform what can be reformed, strengthening the accountability dimension, tackling the double standard, truly ensuring a universal approach to what we believe must be implemented around the world. That are the solution. But the destruction will only bring us to annihilation. So I'm calling on all of you, when we say that the rule-based order is on its way out and that it is a problem, we don't mean that the rule-based system was perfect, and we need to acknowledge that. We must continue to have a transformative agenda. We cannot be cornered into protecting what should not be protected, but we also cannot be forced into destroying something that has held us together, not perfectly, but has held us together. So we must absolutely resist the destruction of that system that is being put forward by Donald Trump and others, with the complicity or the silence of our leaders here, because many of you are European. I think I am here at Davos because I want to send a message of resistance. We must resist what they are planning right now. We must resist the destruction.
I think she's French, but maybe I'm wrong. But let's just assume she's French. All right? France isn't doing so well politically, militarily, and economically. Why would we take advice for someone that's from France?
Resist the notion that corporate sectors can rule every aspect of our lives. We must resist the destruction of the environment. And I wish I will be as hopeful as you are. I'm not at all that hopeful. But I think it could come about if together we say no and we stand up and we resist. It cannot just be about
Smash the New World Order.
must be about Greenland, but it cannot just be about territorial integrity. It must be about values. It must be about the Syrian people who are still demanding accountability. It must be about all of our rights that must be protected, and for that we must be bloody brave and bloody courageous.
Oh, wait, but she still wants lots of immigration that's destroying the culture in France. Is that what she wants? You're a whiner. That's what she is. Look at, she dresses like a Euroliner.
Limits.
You know, we're unfortunately out of time, but I take it you agree with
Okay. I don't know.
We gotta
I
keep it walking.
honestly didn't. I tend to avoid political questions
Yeah.
overall, and that's for some reasons that you would understand from those who have been through what I have been through. But in short, as long as there is a Security Council that's governed by just certain countries, and it's not rotated, it's not allowed to have, like, it doesn't provide the seats for other countries to take over. Just make it a rotational, not make it power centered, but more of a representation focused. Then the whole world order, the legal system, everything will remain the same. So there are questions.
Start socialistic.
What things
She's
in
wrong.
the legal order should change for it to respond to our needs better? We will never have a perfect world, but how can we make it better is by questioning the current system. You don't need to just completely remove or replace the system, but rather find the solution. We often talk about disruption, but we forget that some of the solutions, some of the boundaries that we can create right now exist within the current system. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. You guys are both agreeing. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you also, our panelists. You guys are fantastic. Thank you.
All right. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Help support the work that I do and help support your health and wellness. Get the magnesium and zinc. This will boost up your immune system and also help with your brain function. Take it every day, especially in the winter. Turmeric will soak up free radicals and bring down inflammation, boost up that immune system. Lignans helps with your immune system and endocrine system, brings down inflammation and soaks up free radicals. When you stack these together, very powerful to slow down the aging process. Myotrol, very important to build muscle, do some resistance training. This has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help with the gene expression to build muscle. Omega-3 helps with your cardiovascular health. Clarity Factor, a very powerful neurostat to get rid of brain fog so you can concentrate and help with your memory and speed your thinking. It'll help over time to improve the neuroplasticity and those dendritic connections to speed up cognition and memory. If you have joint pain or muscle pain, get the super strong relief and apply it on your skin, and in 30 seconds you'll have the relief. Very powerful. Olive leaf extract, dual purpose. It's going to help with your cardiovascular health and your immune system. Renew silver gel. With this structural nano silver gel will help with the topical part of your skin. If you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, put it on your hands, around your mouth, around your eyes, around your ears, lightly coat your nostrils. Also put it around your eyes. Stays active for 5.5 hours. And because we're in the winter season, it behooves you to get the structural nano silver drops. Get blueberry, honey and lemon, and cherry flavor. Get a few bags for your household. Very high quality, and mitigate that throat irritation right away. Take them prophylactically or if you have a throat irritation. To help remodel your joints, take collagen. This will help to remodel the joint, improve the cushioning, reduce the erosion of the joint, and reduce pain. So please go to my store, take this every day. And lastly, C60, very strong antioxidant. By taking a teaspoon a day, every day, you're going to improve your immune system, your endocrine system, brain function, cardiovascular health. By soaking up free radicals, you're improving your energy levels because your mitochondria will be healthier. Take a teaspoon a day every day. This will also help with your skin, help to improve the basal layer. Stacks really well with resveratrol. You can get it in avocado oil, MCT coconut oil, and extra virgin olive oil in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. Make sure you take a teaspoon a day. That's the end of my broadcast. Please go to my store, help support the work by getting the products, take them regularly, and you'll slow down the aging process and get healthy. Thank you for listening. Make sure you use discount 5, all caps, discount 5. I want you to save some money. Get the great products that I offer. It's at the-studio-reykjavik.com. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.